They say money leaves a trail, but betrayal is often silent until the final, deafening crash. I spent 10 years tracking illicit funds through the veins of shell corporations, spotting the microscopic tremors of fraud that others missed. Yet, standing in my own living room, I missed the earthquake happening right under my feet. It wasn't the lost wallet that ruined me, it was finding it. The sound of the couch cushion hitting the floor was a dull, heavy thud. I ripped the next one off, my fingernails catching on the expensive textured fabric. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light coming from the hallway, oblivious to my rising panic. "Maya, babe, stop," Rob said. His voice was smooth, like the Merlot he swirled in his glass. He leaned against the doorframe, the very picture of a supportive husband if you ignored the tightness around his eyes. "You left it at the bistro. I remember you putting it on the table when the check came." "I didn't," I said, shoving my hand into the crevice of the armchair. I felt nothing but crumbs and a loose coin. "I put it in my purse. I always put it in my purse. My ID is in there, Rob. My corporate access cards." "We'll call them in the morning," he said, taking a sip. "Cancel everything. It's barely 8 o'clock. Come have a drink." I ignored him, dropping to my knees to look under the credenza. The floorboards were cold against my skin. The smell of his cologne, cedar and something metallic, drifted over me. He was too calm. I was vibrating with adrenaline, and he was resting at a resting heart rate. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a text from the restaurant saying they found it. It was a notification from my bank. A security alert. 1 cent deposited. A micro deposit. The kind used to verify a new external account linking. Someone wasn't just spending my money, they were connecting a pipe to drain the reservoir. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I stared at the screen. The white light burned my retinas. My brain shifted gears, the panic receding behind a wall of cold, hard data. I wasn't a wife looking for a purse anymore. I was a forensic accountant looking at a discrepancy. "What is it?" Rob asked. He took a step toward me. The floorboard groaned under his weight. "Spam," I lied. The word tasted like ash. "Just a solicit." I tapped into the notification details. The banking app was trying to be helpful, showing the location of the request for security purposes. If my wallet was at the bistro downtown, the IP address should have been a generic cellular tower or the restaurant's public network. It wasn't. The request had originated from a device named admin_local. The IP address was familiar. I knew it by heart because I had set up our secure home network myself. The request to link an external offshore account to my primary savings hadn't come from a thief in a downtown alley. It had come from inside this house, 3 minutes ago. I looked up at Rob. He was smiling, a soft, practiced expression that usually made my knees weak. Now it looked like a mask. "I'm going to check the car again," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I already checked the car, Maya," he said, his smile not wavering. "Glove box, under the seats, trunk. It's not there. You're spiraling." He was lying. He hadn't gone to the garage since we got home. I had been in the kitchen the whole time. "You're right," I said, letting my shoulders slump. I feigned a tremor in my hand. "I need a shower. Just to reset." "Good idea." He gestured with his wine glass. "I'll pour you a glass while you wash up." I walked past him, careful not to make eye contact. I went into the master bedroom, but I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the walk-in closet. Rob had gone to the gym earlier. His leather duffel bag was tossed in the corner, slumped over like a dead body. I knelt beside it. The leather was cool and smelled of locker room humidity and sweat. I unzipped the main compartment, damp towel, running shoes, a protein shaker bottle that hadn't been rinsed. I felt along the lining. My fingers brushed against a zipper for the internal pocket. I pulled it open. My wallet was there. I pulled it out, my breath hitching. It was intact. My driver's license, my credit cards, the $300 in cash I kept for emergencies, all there. But something was lighter. I flipped to the back slot, the one with the mesh window. It was empty. My RSA secure token, the little digital fob that generated the 6-digit codes I needed to authorize high-level transfers at my firm, was gone. Hoist. I shoved the wallet back into his bag and zipped it shut. I needed to think. He didn't want my money. He wanted my access. He needed the physical token to bypass the two-factor authentication for the firm's escrow accounts. He was going to use my credentials to authorize a transaction that would look like I did it. I walked back into the bedroom, stripping off my blouse to keep up the charade of getting ready for a shower. Rob walked in, holding a glass of wine. "Here," he said softly. "Thanks." I took it, setting it on the nightstand without drinking. "Actually, Rob, can I borrow your phone for a second? Mine is dying and I just want to check the Yelp page for the bistro, see if anyone posted about a lost item." I held out my hand, a simple domestic request. Rob's hand went instinctively to his pocket. He took a half step back. "My battery is dead too, babe. Sorry, I was just about to plug it in." "Oh." I looked at his pocket. I could see the outline of the phone. I could see the faint glow of the screen through the fabric of his chinos. I thought I saw it light up. "Must be a reflection," he said. He crossed his arms, physically shielding the pocket. His biceps flexed, a barrier between me and the truth. "Just take your shower, Maya. Stop obsessing." I turned on the shower in the master bath, letting the water hammer against the tiles. Steam began to fill the room. I locked the door, then immediately opened the window and climbed out onto the patio roof. It was dangerous, but I needed isolation. I crept along the shingles to the guest bathroom window, prying it open. I slipped inside and grabbed the old iPad we kept there for guests. I sat on the cold tile floor, my hands shaking as I navigated to my firm's remote portal. I typed in my username and password. Enter token code. I didn't have the token, but I had the emergency backup codes memorized, a sequence I generated once a year for disaster recovery. I prayed Rob didn't know about them. I keyed in the sequence, 8441990. The screen flashed green, access granted. I navigated to the pending transaction queue. My stomach dropped. There it was. A wire transfer initiated 10 minutes ago. Amount $4,200,000. Source, client escrow A7. Destination, Chimera Holdings, Cayman Islands. Status, awaiting final verification. It wasn't just theft. It was a life sentence. If that money left the account, I would be the one in handcuffs by Monday morning. I couldn't cancel it from the iPad. The system required a biometric confirmation, my fingerprint, or the physical token code for a cancellation of this magnitude. And Rob had the token. I needed to leave. I needed to get to the police station or the office. I climbed back through the window, soaked from the mist, and returned to the master bath. I turned off the shower and wrapped a towel around my head. I dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater. I walked out to the living room. Rob was sitting on the sofa, typing on his laptop. He snapped it shut the moment he saw me. "I'm going to run to the store," I said, grabbing my keys from the hook. "We're out of milk." "We have milk," Rob said. He didn't look up. "It's expired." I checked. I walked toward the front door. I reached for the handle. It didn't turn. The heavy-duty deadbolt, the one that required a key from both sides, was engaged. "Rob, where's the key?" I asked, my voice rising. He stood up slowly. He walked over to me, looming in the hallway light. "It's late, Maya," he said. His voice was devoid of warmth now. "You're tired. You're not going anywhere tonight." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I had married 3 years ago. The man who cried at our wedding. He was gone. In his place was a stranger who had calculated the exact cost of my freedom. "Fine," I said. "I'll order delivery." I turned my back on him and walked into the kitchen. My mind was racing. He had the token. He had the house locked down. He probably had my phone monitored if he was tracking the Wi-Fi. I needed an outside line. I leaned against the counter, staring at the chaotic abstract sculpture in the corner of the living room. It was a hideous thing Rob had bought at a garage sale last month. He had been obsessed with it, claiming it had potential. I remembered seeing him earlier that day, twisting the base of it. I waited until he went back to the couch. I walked over to the sculpture, pretending to straighten a picture frame next to it. My hand slipped down to the base. I felt a seam that shouldn't be there. I pushed. A small panel slid open. Inside the hollow metal belly of the art piece, resting on a bed of dust, was a cheap black flip phone. I held the burner phone like it was a live grenade. The plastic was cheap and greasy, the kind of burner you buy at a gas station with cash and a fake smile. My thumb hovered over the side button. I knew I had seconds before Rob noticed I wasn't just admiring his terrible taste in art. I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life, a low-resolution blue glow that seemed deafeningly bright in the dim living room. There was no passcode. Of course not. Rob was arrogant. He assumed I would never look inside a piece of sculpture I had vocally despised for weeks. I navigated to the messages folder. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that threatened to drown out the hum of the refrigerator. There was only one thread. One message, received 12 minutes ago. Auth code 7920 alpha, valid for 30 minutes. I stared at the alphanumeric string. It was a dual-channel authentication code. The bank didn't just need the token. For a transfer of this size, they required a secondary confirmation sent to a registered mobile device. He had registered this burner as his secure line. This was the key. If I had this code, I could theoretically call the fraud department and override the pending status, or at least flag it as suspicious before the 9 o'clock window opened. I heard the floorboard creak in the hallway. Rob was moving. I quickly memorized the numbers, 7920 alpha. I went to shut the phone, but the screen flashed. A low battery icon blinked in the corner. Red. Critical. Before I could navigate to the settings to dim the brightness, the screen went black. I pressed the power button again. Nothing. The cheap device had given up the ghost right when I held the smoking gun. Panic flared, hot and sharp. I needed that phone on. I needed to see if there were other messages, other contacts, or at the very least keep it alive to receive the next code if the bank sent a refresh. I scanned the room for a charger. It was an old model needing a mini USB, the kind with the trapezoid shape that nobody used anymore. I hurried to the kitchen drawer where we kept the cable spaghetti, that tangled mess of wires every household accumulates. I pulled the drawer open, the metal runners screeching softly. Empty. I stared at the wood grain of the drawer bottom. It wasn't just disorganized, it was barren. Then I remembered last Tuesday. Rob had gone on a cleaning spree. He had stood in this very kitchen holding a cardboard box, smiling that charming, boyish smile. "Babe, why are we keeping cables for phones we haven't owned since 2010? I'm tossing them." I had thanked him. I had actually kissed him on the cheek and thanked him for decluttering. It hadn't been domestic diligence. It was a preemptive strike. He had systematically removed the only means I would have to power the one device that could incriminate him. He knew exactly what he was buying, and he knew exactly what I wouldn't be able to find. I couldn't let him see the fear on my face. If he knew I knew, the game changed from cat and mouse to something far more physical. I needed a charger, and I had one last hope. The graveyard in a heavy plastic bin in the garage where Rob kept the remnants of his failed drop-shipping business. But the garage was past the living room, and the door was loud. I needed a diversion. I looked at the smart speaker on the kitchen counter. I pulled up the app on my own phone, which was still connected to the local network even if the internet was jammed. I set a timer on the bedroom speaker, the one furthest from the garage. 10 seconds. I counted down in my head, moving silently toward the mudroom. 3, 2, 1. A loud, jarring alarm blared from the master bedroom. "What the hell?" I heard Rob shout from the office. His footsteps thudded heavily as he ran toward the bedroom to shut it off. I sprinted to the garage door, eased it open, and slipped into the cool, gasoline-scented darkness. I fumbled for the light switch, but stopped. Light would spill under the door. I had to do this by feel. I dropped to my knees, crawling over the concrete until my hands hit the cold plastic of the bin. I tore the lid off. I plunged my hands into the mess of packing peanuts and discarded electronics. I felt a webcam, a broken headset, and then a wire. I pulled it up, tracing the tip with my thumb. USB-C. Useless. I dove back in. I heard the muffled sound of the bedroom alarm stopping. He would be coming back. He would wonder where I was. My fingers brushed a thick, rubbery cable. I traced the end. It was the right shape. I scrambled up, clutching the cable to my chest, and turned to the door. The door that was now opening. Rob stood in the silhouette of the kitchen light, his shadow stretching long across the garage floor to touch my feet. He wasn't holding a weapon, but the way he stood, legs apart, weight forward, was a threat in itself. "Searching for tools, Maya?" Rob asked. His voice echoed in the hollow space of the garage. I didn't back down. I couldn't. The adrenaline had burned away the trembling. I held up the cable, then the dead burner phone. "Searching for a charger," I said, my voice cutting through the damp air. "For this, the one you hid in the sculpture." He didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised. He just sighed, a long, weary sound, and stepped into the garage, letting the door click shut behind him. We were in the dark now, save for the moonlight filtering through the high windows. "I didn't want you to find that," he said. "Clearly. Is this how you pay for the market downturns, Rob? Wire fraud? Stealing from my clients?" "It's not stealing," he said, walking toward me. I stepped back, hitting the workbench. "It's borrowing. I can put it back. I just need the liquidity for 48 hours. "Liquidity? It's $4.2 million. You can't day trade that back." "It's not for trading," he snapped, the calm facade cracking. "It's for them." He stopped 3 feet from me. I could smell the wine on his breath. "Who?" "The people I owe," he whispered. "You think I just lost my money? I borrowed from serious people, Maya, people who don't send collection letters. They sent me a picture of you walking into your office last week. They know your schedule. They know where we live." He reached out, his hand trembling. "I'm doing this to buy our lives back. If I don't pay them by tomorrow, they come for you." For a second, the gravity of it pulled me in. The protective husband narrative was a powerful drug. It explained the secrecy, the desperation. It made him a victim, not a villain. "Show me," I said. "Show me the threat." He pulled his primary phone from his pocket. He unlocked it and tapped furiously, then shoved the screen in my face. It was an email. Subject, "Final notice." The text was sparse, menacing, demanding payment. Attached was a grainy photo of me getting out of my car. My eyes scanned the header. "Look at the timestamp, Rob," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "What?" "The timestamp. This email was received 3 years ago, November 2020. I looked up at him. The sorrow in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp calculation. "We met in 2021, I said. "You didn't borrow money to save us. You were already in deep before you even bought me a drink. You didn't marry me for love. You married a forensic accountant with escrow access because you needed a bailout." The silence that followed was heavier than the garage air. It was the silence of a trap snapping shut. He hadn't fallen into debt. He had been underwater for years, scouting for a lifeline. I wasn't his wife. I was his exit strategy. "You're smarter than you look," Rob said softly. "I always hated that about you. You notice everything." He took a step closer. But you missed one thing. What? I braced myself, expecting him to lunge. The tea, he said. The chamomile I made you while you were searching earlier. You drank half of it. My hand went to my stomach involuntarily. I had taken a few sips while he was ranting about the lost wallet in the kitchen. Before I went to the bedroom, I hadn't thought anything of it. It takes about 20 minutes, he said, checking his watch. Crush sedative. Strong stuff. I use it for the insomnia. As if on cue, the edges of my vision blurred. A wave of artificial exhaustion rolled over me, making my knees feel like they were made of water. It wasn't just fear. My body was betraying me. I don't need you to agree, Maya, he said, his voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. I just need you to sleep until 9. Once the transfer clears, I'll be gone. You can tell the police whatever you want. They'll never find me. He reached out and gently took the burner phone from my limp hand. I tried to make a fist, but my fingers wouldn't obey. I stumbled past him, shoving him into the workbench with the last of my strength. The surprise gave me a head start. I lurched out of the garage, into the kitchen, and threw myself into the downstairs half bath, locking the door behind me. I collapsed onto the cold tile. The room was spinning. The ceiling light left trails in my vision. Sleep, my brain whispered. Just close your eyes. No, I gritted out. I dragged myself to the toilet. I jammed 2 fingers down my throat. It was violent and wretched, but I forced my body to reject the poison. I heaved until there was nothing left but acid and air. I lay there, gasping, tears streaming down my face, but the fog in my brain began to lift slightly. The heavy blanket of the drug was still there, but the edge was duller. I sat up, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. I needed water. I reached up to the sink, pulling myself to a standing position. My foot kicked something loose under the vanity cabinet. The toe kick, the piece of wood at the base of the cabinet, was crooked. I frowned. Rob was meticulous about home repairs. He wouldn't leave a loose board. I crouched down, fighting the dizziness, and pried the board loose with my fingernails. Behind it, taped to the drywall, was a plastic bag. I ripped it open. Inside was a passport. I flipped it open, expecting to see Rob's face. It was his face. But the name wasn't Robert. Name, Thomas J. Sterling. Nationality, St. Kitts and Nevis. And underneath the passport was a one-way plane ticket printed on paper. Departure, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Destination, Manila. He wasn't just Rob, the failed traitor. He was a professional, and I was just the latest mark in a long line of burned aliases. The passport weighed nothing in my hand, but it anchored me to a reality I hadn't wanted to see. Thomas J. Sterling. The photo was Rob, my Rob, but younger, with a harder set to his jaw and cold, dead eyes. The stamps were a roadmap of his predation. Bangkok 2016, Sao Paulo 2018. He wasn't an unlucky traitor. He was a locust. He landed, consumed, and moved on. I flipped to the back page. There was a handwritten list of numbers, not phone numbers, account numbers, and next to each, a name. Elena, Sarah, Maya. I was third on the list. The first 2 were crossed out in red ink. I wasn't just losing my savings. I was looking at a ledger of women who had probably lost everything, their homes, their credit, maybe their lives, so Rob could maintain his lifestyle of mid-shelf wine and leased luxury cars. The nausea from the drugs surged again, but this time it was mixed with a fury so white-hot it burned the fog right out of my brain. He had underestimated me. He thought I was just another line item. I shoved the passport into my waistband. The lock on the bathroom door rattled. "Maya," he called out, "don't make this difficult. Unlock the door." He was going to break the door down. I had maybe 2 minutes before the cheap wood splintered. I looked around the small room. No windows, no phone, just the toilet, the sink, and the smart home thermostat on the wall. I stared at the digital dial. It controlled the climate. but it was also hardwired into the home automation hub. I couldn't make a call, but I could control the environment. I tapped the screen. System settings, exterior lighting. I found the porch light toggle. I set up a routine, on, off, on, off. I set the interval to 1 second. It was a long shot. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was a retired beat cop with insomnia and a suspicion of anyone who parked in front of his driveway. If he saw my porch light strobing like a disco at 2 a.m, he wouldn't just complain, he'd investigate. I hit run. Outside, I imagined the lights flashing. Short, 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 long, long, long. SOS. The doorknob twisted violently. A shoulder slammed against the wood. I know you're in there, Maya. Open the damn door. The wood around the striker plate cracked. A splinter of painted timber flew into the room. He was done playing the concerned husband. I needed a weapon. I looked at the toilet tank. It was porcelain, heavy, solid, and brutal. I lifted the lid, the ceramic scraping softly against the tank. It weighed about 10 pounds. I gripped it with both hands, stepping back into the corner of the room adjacent to the door. If he came in, he'd have to step past me to see me. "Last chance!" he screamed. Another slam. The door jamb gave way. The door swung open, hitting the vanity with a deafening crash. Rob stood there, breathing hard, his hair disheveled. He scanned the room, his eyes wild. He spotted me in the corner, holding the lid like a baseball bat. He didn't attack. He laughed, a dry, breathless sound. "Put it down, Maya. You can't even stand up straight." I lowered the lid slowly, letting it rest on the tile. I let my shoulders slump, feigning the return of the sedative's grip. I allowed my eyelids to droop. "You're right," I whispered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the dead burner phone. I held it out to him with a shaking hand. I swallowed hard. I did it. He froze. "What?" "I authorized it," I lied, "on the iPad before I got sick. I approved the transfer." His eyes widened. The greed was instantaneous, overriding his anger. "The code," I said, my voice trembling. "The bank sent a final confirmation code to this phone just now. I can't read it. The battery died, but the message is there." I offered him the black plastic brick. "Just take it," I sobbed. "Take the money. Just leave me alone." He snatched the phone from my hand. He looked at the black screen, then at me. He saw a broken woman. He didn't see the forensic accountant who knew that greed was the ultimate blinder. "If you're lying," he started. "Check it," I said. "Please, just go." He turned and ran back to the living room. I followed, leaning against the wall for support, watching him. He sat on the couch, his laptop open on the coffee table. The screen glowed with the banking interface. Status, pending authorization. "It's dead," he muttered, pressing the power button on the burner. "Damn it." He looked around for a charger. He remembered the cable I had found in the garage, the one he thought was just a standard USB-C. I had left it on the kitchen counter when I ran. He grabbed it. He plugged one end into the burner phone and the other into the USB port of his laptop. I held my breath. That cable wasn't a charger. It was a data bridge I had recovered from a seized hacker's den 3 years ago. It was designed to bypass power regulation and dump a high-voltage surge into the data lines of the host device. A USB killer. I had kept it in the junk bin to destroy old hard drives before recycling them. He shoved the connector in. There was no chime of a device connecting. There was a sharp pop, like a light bulb bursting. The laptop screen went black instantly. A wisp of acrid blue smoke curled up from the USB port. "What?" Rob slammed his hand on the keys. "No, no, no, no!" He pressed the power button frantically. Nothing. The motherboard was fried. The hard drive controller was toast. "You bitch!" He stood up, hurling the dead laptop onto the floor. It shattered, plastic shards skittering across the hardwood. He turned toward me, his face twisted into a mask of pure violence. The mask of Thomas Sterling. "You ruined it," he hissed, stepping over the coffee table. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I saved my client's money," I said, my voice steady now, "and I saved myself." He lunged. Blue and red lights swept across the living room walls, flashing through the sheer curtains. A siren chirped, sharp and loud, right in the driveway. Rob froze mid-step. "Police!" A voice boomed from the front porch. "Open the door!" Mr. Henderson. He hadn't just called. He had called it in as a domestic disturbance in progress. Rob looked at the door, then at the back patio. He was calculating the exit. But he knew the layout. The back fence was 6 feet high, and I had locked the gate weeks ago. He looked back at me. For the first time, I saw the fear. Not the fear of debt, but the fear of a cage. "It's over, Thomas," I said. "The transfer failed, the laptop is dead, and they have your prints on the passport." The front door burst open with a battering ram of a kick. Uniformed officers flooded the hallway. I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes on him, watching the perfect husband dissolve into nothing. They say love is blind, but I think love is just a very convincing filter. We see what we want to see. The charm, the potential, the safety. We ignore the discrepancies, the missing hours, the unexplained receipts. We think, not him, not us. I spent a career catching thieves who stole from corporations, but I let one sleep in my bed for 3 years. I missed the red flags because they were painted the same color as my dreams. But here's the truth about the ledger. It always balances. Eventually, the debt comes due. He thought he was the architect of my ruin, but he forgot that an architect is nothing without a foundation. And when I pulled that foundation out, when I stopped funding his lie, the whole house came down. So tonight, do me a favor. Check the accounts you don't look at. Look at the timestamp on that email. Ask the question you've been too afraid to ask. Because the only thing more expensive than the truth is the lie you pay for every single day. What is the one red flag you've been ignoring in your own life? If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.